Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. If you're gearing up for major construction, infrastructure, or industrial projects in the next couple of years, you're in the exact right place. Today we're diving straight into the definitive cable ladder supplier guide for 2026. Because let's be real, this isn't just about buying metal. It's about navigating those tricky supplier qualifications, dodging massive scheduling disasters, and locking down your supply chain with total confidence. So let's take this 2026 buyer's guide and turn it into a clear, actionable roadmap of exactly what you need to verify before you even think about signing those purchase orders. Here's our roadmap for today. First, we'll look at the qualification time trap, followed by how smart design saves big money. After that, we'll navigate global load standards, cover avoiding mid-build delays, discuss securing 2026 lead times, and finally, look at our source data from NEMA.
All right, let's jump right into Section 1, the qualification time trap, and the very high cost of skipping steps.
When it comes to procurement, there's this really stark, unforgiving contrast in time. Look, doing a proper supplier qualification, it actually only takes about 3 to 7 business days. We're talking just a week of paperwork and basic due diligence. But if you try to skip that step to rush your purchasing, history shows you're risking mid-build delays of 4 to 6 weeks. Think about that for a second. You could have your entire site, your crews, your heavy machinery, literally just sitting idle for over a month, all because a supplier's product failed a basic compliance check during installation. You're trading a few days of prep for weeks of absolute catastrophe.
So, I really want you to ask yourself, can your 2026 project afford a mid-build halt? If the answer is no, and honestly, for any major project, the answer is absolutely no, then we need to look at how the best buyers prevent this. And here's the secret. That prevention actually starts way before anyone picks up a phone to call a supplier.
And that brings us to Section 2, Smart Design Saves Big Money. Let's talk about the decisions you have to make before the build even kicks off. Listen. Critical material and coding decisions belong firmly in the design stage, not during procurement and definitely not during installation. It happens all the time. Buyers treat cable ladders like an afterthought, just some minor line item. But deciding on the structural integrity, the load capacity, and those anti-corrosion coatings right up front, that dictates your entire supplier pool. If you wait until you're asking for quotes to figure out what you actually need, well, you've already fallen into the time trap.
Let me give you a real-world example that perfectly illustrates this. There was an 18,000 square meter petrochemical expansion project. Huge scale, right? Initially, they planned on using a standard 60mm rail height for their cable ladders. But during the design phase, they decided to upgrade that specification to a 110mm option. And that one move dramatically changed the structural capabilities of their entire cable management system. Because that 110mm rail was stronger, it could span much longer distances without sagging. And because of that, it reduced the total support bracket count required for the entire facility by a massive 22%. I mean, think about that scale. That is 22% less steel you have to buy, 22% fewer brackets to ship to the site, and 22% fewer installation points for your labor crews to drill and bolt.
And here's the real kicker, the actual financial impact. That single design choice, made nice and early, directly saved the project 340,000 RMB, just by changing a single rail height spec on paper before they ever went to market. This is exactly why smart design isn't just some engineering best practice. It's a massive financial lever for your 2026 projects.
Now let's move on to Section 3, Navigating Global Load Standards. Let's figure out which standard actually governs your specific project.
If you're going to confidently source for projects of any scale, you absolutely have to understand this alphabet soup of load class standards. The 2026 Buyer Guide highlights 4 big ones. You've got IEC 61537 internationally, the American NEMA VE1 standard, the British and European BSEN 61537, and the Chinese national standard GB 31251. You can't just ask a supplier, hey, is your product strong? That doesn't cut it. You must verify exactly which of these standards they comply with and match it directly to your region. A cable ladder built perfectly to an industrial standard in one country could entirely fail an inspection in another.
Which perfectly tees up Section 4, Avoiding Mid-Build Delays, featuring the Jubail chemical plant case study.
So how do you actually prove a supplier meets those complex load standards we just talked about? You demand ILAC-accredited test reports. ILAC stands for the International Laboratory Accreditation Cooperation. Now, these aren't just in-house promises from the manufacturer saying, trust us.
These are certified documents from globally recognized independent testing labs proving the products can safely handle the loads. The absolute key takeaway here, you have to demand these during the shortlisting phase, not after you've signed the contract.
And here's how that exact strategy played out in the real world. A major chemical plant project over in Jubail used a highly structured supplier evaluation framework. Right out of the gate, they demanded those ILAC-accredited test reports during shortlisting. If a supplier didn't have them, boom, cut immediately. Because they were so rigorous up front, they completely bypassed the time trap. They saved exactly 6 weeks of requalification delays that other similar projects end up suffering through. It just proves that strict upfront qualification is the ultimate time saver.
Moving on to Section 5, securing 2026 lead times and locking in your supply chain.
As we plan for 2026, buyers need to strictly separate their procurement into 2 distinct buckets: standard lead times versus custom lead times. It is incredibly dangerous to assume that just because a standard cable ladder has, say, a 3-week delivery window, your specific upgraded 110mm specially coated ladders are going to arrive in that same time frame. They won't. Custom requirements will always alter the critical path of your delivery schedule.
So, to avoid total supply chain gridlock, you need to follow a simple 3-step sequence. Step 1, identify precisely if your parts need standard or custom manufacturing runs based on your design phase. Step 2, confirm all lead times in writing with the supplier. Seriously, do not rely on a verbal, "Yeah, we can do that." And only after Step 2 is fully complete do you move to Step 3, formally committing to the supplier. Getting all those expectations locked down on paper is how you protect your timeline.
Finally, let's look at Section 6, about our source for this information, Shanghai Sinma Busway and Cable Tray Co., Ltd.
The insights and data from the 2026 Buyer's Guide are drawn directly from the operations of Sinma. They manufacture a pretty wide array of infrastructure components: cable tray systems, busway, and seismic bracing. They're heavily involved in providing intelligent cable management solutions across high-demand sectors. So we're talking data centers, rail transit, industrial plants, and commercial buildings. And crucially, tying right back to our earlier discussion, their products comply with the major global load standards we reviewed: IEC 161537, NEMA VE1, BSEN 50085, and GB 31251.
So, as we wrap up this explainer today, I want to leave you with one final critical question to consider for your own operations. Are your 2026 suppliers verified, or are you risking a 6-week delay? Remember, taking just 3 to 7 days right now to demand those ILAC reports and verify load standards is literally the smartest investment you can make for your project's timeline and budget. Thanks so much for joining me today, and best of luck securing a rock-solid supply chain for 2026.